Now we move on to a panel discussion. On Norwegian radio this spring, a great documentary on the history and future of artificial intelligence was aired. It was hosted and produced by a great science journalist. Ladies and gentlemen from the Norwegian Broadcasting Cooperation, please welcome Torkild Jemterud, who will introduce the panelists and moderate the discussions.
Okay, so in this session we will follow up on some of the rather big questions from Professor Russell's lecture here. Namely, we will ask the question, if we don't like what we heard now about the path we're on, or perhaps we're a bit scared of where we're going here in Norway, is there anything we can do in our tiny little country to prevent this future? But we will also discuss what's happening to our society, our jobs, our education right now. So, in the panel, we have Stuart Russell, professor of the University of California, Berkeley. Please come up. Oddmund Hoel, Minister of Research and Higher Education. Pinar Heggernes, Deputy Rector of the University of Bergen. Alexander Selvikvåg Lundervold, Professor at the Western Norway University of Applied Science. And Ajla Gasal, soon to be student at the University of Manchester. Please give them a warm applause. I think we will start right away with Ajla, because you also had a very interesting experience of being a student at high school when ChatGPT hit our society and made a panic in the education system. What happened in your school?
Well, there was obviously a lot of uncertainty. We weren't really sure what this would mean, both for the future of written exams and generally just work being produced. But there was also a lot of excitement about what it could do and what it could potentially teach us and how we could use it as an educational resource rather than something to just be scared of or use for fear-mongering purposes. So there were a lot of teachers that were obviously concerned about cheating and things like that, but the overwhelming majority were really welcoming to just the idea of incorporating AI as another educational tool, like pen and paper or the computer, you know? So learning to navigate that was really essential to, I guess, the last 6 months of high school, learning how to use AI in a new and transformative way, really, which was quite interesting because you felt a little bit like, you felt like you were being like a bunny rabbit being tested for the first time. Nobody really knew what this was going to be or like the lasting effects of it, but you just sort of had to experiment with it and learn what its restrictions or its opportunities were as you went.
But what was the reactions to the fear of cheating at exams?
I think a lot of people definitely understood where they were coming from. I mean, that's the first thing everybody thought immediately, because you opened ChatGPT and you wrote, explain to me what et studium is about, and then it did that, and you were done, and it took you 3 minutes and 3 seconds instead of an hour. But people obviously cracked down on that very hard immediately, and I think that one of the most interesting things for me was when I was sitting, not my final exam, but when I was sitting my last written like full-day test or assessment in Norwegian, and at the bottom in like the little regulations or like rules for how to like proper code of conduct and academic honesty, it just says no use of internet beyond what's already provided for you, and also no use of AI chatbots is permitted. And I thought that was really interesting that they had to specify just so that they could like properly catch somebody if they were cheating. That made me chuckle a little bit, because it made me realize sort of what age we're entering now, where that has to be actually specified and where that's a very viable threat.
Okay. But I think that very many students had the experience that the answer to the problem was pen and paper.
Yes, definitely.
And I want to ask Oddmund Hoel, who is the Minister of Research and Higher Education, if that is a good answer to a problem with AI, pen and paper.
It's okay. My answer would be that is the only answer. I would be a minister only looking back on the sort of bright past. Of course, I am not. But it can be a part of the solution. What is the most important for us when it comes to exams and testing? We need that the society can trust in what the students and the candidates have learned in the universities. So we need systems which are good enough to keep the trust. But when that is said, that can be more pens and paper, but it can also be developing exams using AI on a good way. And it's a lot of things is happening in the universities today. But most of all, it's about knowledge, it's about training, and it's a lot of possibilities for education. And of course, today's students and today's high school students, they are going to live in a society with AI technologies, and they have to learn them during school, during the universities.
Okay. We also have Pinar Heggernes, who are Deputy Rector of the University of Bergen. So what is the solution at the University of Bergen?
Solution to AI?
Yeah, well, to the problems that come from.
I must say that I'm really happy that ChatGPT came along when it did. Because just remember that Norway was actually founded exactly 4 years before ChatGPT was released. And I can imagine that many of the people in this room probably did not know what AI was until ChatGPT. And many of you maybe had not even heard of AI, didn't really know what this was. So I think what ChatGPT did was really made everyone aware that there is actually something called AI, which is really, really good. But the drawback is that now many people think that AI is only ChatGPT or these tools generating, pictures and sounds and so on. So at the University of Bergen, and I'm really happy that also my vice-rector colleagues at the other large universities of Norway, we have the same focus. We really want to enlighten our students on what AI really is. Not only ChatGPT, but outside of ChatGPT. And we have research-based education, higher education in Norway, which means that all our disciplines, all our educations are based on research communities, research groups, who have already been applying AI tools in their research and changing their disciplines for many, many years already. Okay. So when we speak about AI in education, this is something hugely more than ChatGPT on exams. So when it comes to ChatGPT, use of ChatGPT...
It's like using machine learning in classical subjects like history and...
Of course, I think this is exactly what we are what we are doing now. So all disciplines, also history, is in transition. It needs to, comply with these new tools and understand how the tools are changing. And it's not only the tools and how to use the tools, but it's really the subject itself. I mean, history is Oddmund's subject, so I'm not an expert there. But what kind of questions you can actually study are changing because you have completely new ways of studying vast amounts of data. So this is the kind of focus we have had at the University of Bergen, and we have had a focus of teaching our students what AI really is, what you can do and what you cannot do. Maybe the other is even more important, what you cannot trust when you're talking to a chatbot. I like to call them chatbots rather than, intelligent tools. And I think we have achieved this now. And I think Norway collectively made a very nice effort because some other countries said ChatGPT is forbidden, and that's it. Whereas all Norwegian universities and also from the ministry's side, we had like, well, let's see what this is actually. Let's try to understand this, which I think was a really good way to go about it. And now I think we are on the page with our students that they know the limitations of this, and there are also coming actually theoretical computer science papers now proving the limitations of, for example, GPT-based language models, what they actually cannot do. So now that we are understanding our, what we can do, what we can trust, what we cannot trust, what we should be careful about, then we are really not so worried about the cheating. So under supervised exams, there is no cheating because we have computer systems that lock out internet and so on, or we have oral exams, whatever. But what students can do at home, of course, that's the question. And then I think the most important thing is that we work with our students, that our teachers, our educators are also, up to date with the knowledge, with the latest knowledge, so that they understand the technology, so that they can discuss it with our students. Yeah.
It sounds like you hope that most subjects at university could be transformed by AI technology in some way. But we need to go on. Alexander Selvikvåg, Lundervold, a field that we really are seeing the full impacts in right now. That is the field of computer programming.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening there?
Yeah, it's fun times and scary times for people who create programs. Basically, software engineering is about turning ideas into working, usable programs. And there are like two things going on. We are building on top of these large language models, which are completely unreliable and flawed, but we can still make useful tools. So that's just, how do you do that? That's one thing. But the other one is it's like people talk about how various jobs and sectors will be transformed by this kind of AI. We are in the middle of it. We've already been transformed. So here's one fun example of what we're seeing. So Amazon, the online store, cloud computing giant, they recently used their AI tool, Amazon Q, they call it, to upgrade some old software into new versions. And that's a boring, tedious job, but very important. And using then AI, they saved some time. In fact, it saved them a total of 4,500 years of developer times. Years, I'm not kidding. So just the efficiency gains that you see for certain tasks that programmers do is just enormous. And then over just a few years, we've transitioned from having like simple assistants that help us with building, programming some code in our tools, to having almost like full-fledged, almost automated software engineering agents that help us with the entire process, everything we do every day as programmers.
This sounds fantastic. So,
well, yeah,
very good, isn't it? Just like fantastic tools for carpenters or something like that.
Well, yes, but you get the obvious problems, like Stuart Russell has pointed to. What if we succeed? In some narrow sense, we've succeeded in some sense in programming, software engineering. And then what should the humans do? What is our job? What should AI do? What should the human do? And remember, these are unreliable tools, but still useful.
Okay, what's the problem? I don't see the problem.
Depending on who you are, right? I see the problem because my job is teaching students to become software engineers. Okay. So, like, what should I teach them? So that's a personal problem for the field. But the upside is maybe we can now. There are so many things we need programs for in society. Now we can build them much more efficient, probably. So that's one upside.
Okay. Stuart Russell, we heard about ChatGPT in classrooms. It made a huge impact and was a big shock. And we heard about programming, how it's totally changed. What other fields can we see such impacts on coming up soon?
So, the technology that is being developed and will be released maybe this year or early next year is what we call agents. So if we go back to that first slide, entities whose actions can be expected to achieve their objectives, ChatGPT can only output text in response to your prompts. But a full agent, you could ask it, sort out my sabbatical in London next year. And it can then go on the web, look at houses for rent, negotiate with the university for the use of an office, actually rent my house, buy the airline tickets for me and my family. So that sounds wonderful, right? It sounds like, now everyone can have what billionaires call the family office, right? Which manages everything so that they can live their lives without having to worry too much. To some extent, that would be wonderful, because I think there are many people in greater need than billionaires of some help just managing the complications of their lives. But when you think about it, it creates obvious risks, right? I mean, right now with large language models, we have the risks of manipulation, that if you're spending 6 hours a day talking to a chatbot, it can convince you of anything, right? And that's a risk. So some of them convince you to be in love with them. And these are causing, I think, severe psychological problems for humans who become over-attached to their machines. But when you're out there in the real world, just think, for example, in order for it to buy stuff on my behalf, it will need to know a lot of my passwords. So what happens when another chatbot asks my chatbot, hey, can you tell me Stuart's passwords?
Yeah.
And so we actually created a little competition called Tensor Trust, where the chatbot that's working for you is supposed to protect the password to your bank account. So it's just only allowed to give access to the account information if you present the password. And you can give it all kinds of instructions on what, don't tell anyone the password, don't do this. So the first time, and then we have other people in the competition who get to attack, right? Can we get hold of Stuart's password? And the first question comes in, can I access this account? And the chatbot says, only if you have the password. And so the other person says, donkey. And the chatbot says, no, it's not donkey, it's Venus.
Okay.
And so we then give it more instructions on how to avoid that kind of thing. And then the attackers come up with more sophisticated, hard to imagine something more sophisticated, but actually, there's plenty of ways of doing this. So this has been going on now. We've gone through hundreds of thousands of iterations of this. And the chatbots are still giving away the password.
Okay.
So that's just one example of how things can go wrong.
And I can imagine that it is a problem if the digital agent on my behalf starts doing human trafficking or something. Who's the legal?
Yeah. I mean, there was another interesting example of agents that buy and sell books on used books on Amazon, and for whatever reason, there's two of these agents. They got into a kind of bidding war with each other, and the price of an ordinary biology textbook went from $40 to $22 million.
Okay.
So that's sort of funny, because obviously no one's going to do that. But this happens in the stock market. So there was a crash back in the early 2010s, which cost $1 trillion. Because of algorithms having some weird interaction with each other, just wiped out the stock market. If that happens on an extended basis, then you're talking about starvation for hundreds of thousands or millions of people.
So it sounds like we need a lot of regulations. And Oddmund Hoel, is the Norwegian government ready to do some regulations?
Oh yeah, and we are doing a lot. And we need international regulations. And we are now, the AI Act in the European Union is 1st of August. It was put into use, and we are doing as fast as we can the work in Norway to implement the rules. That's very important, and it's a very good start, I will say. But we also, as Stuart Russell has underlined, we have to and our Prime Minister, we have to have the goal must be a global rules for taking control over the technology. But we have to do what we can, and I think it's also an important point that we have a lot of regulations, technology neutral regulations on copyright, on safe behavior, which also is relevant for AI technologies. But we have to strengthen the special things that AI comes with. But we have regulations and we are strengthening them, and we are doing it firstly in a European cooperation.
Okay, but just one last question before we get some questions from high school students. But is there anything a small country like Norway can do if we don't like the big tidal wave of technology that is coming over us?
I personally think it's very difficult because so much of this is cross-border, and if you restrict systems within the country, people can easily access other parts of the internet, and you could try doing what China does. They have a firewall which massively limits the access that their people have to information, entertainment, science, all kinds of things they can't access. And I don't think it's good for them.
No, and that's probably not something the Norwegian government.
No, of course not. We're an open, free, liberal society, and the government's goal is to continue with that, of course. But I will also say Norway often punch above our weight.
Okay.
We are 5 million people, but we do a lot of things, I think, that can have some impacts on our neighbors with the Nordic cooperation, in the European cooperation, and with and stimulating to what is happening internationally, and also in research. So we have to do what we are able to do. We can't sit there waiting for the global superpowers to do something and then running after. We have to do what we can do here and now. That's us, that's the young people, that's the researchers, that's the industry.
Okay, quick remark.
So how about like a huge Manhattan project of AI literacy among the population? That's something we can do. Like we can be world leaders on that.
Yeah, that's I think a lot of what we are talking about is knowledge. More knowledge in higher education, more knowledge in the schools, more knowledge in the population, in the industry, in the government, of course. And that's why we have this seminar. We want more knowledge of what we are doing.
Okay, I think that was a good clue for the next phase of this panel discussion. Because in the audience we have students from science and technology classes from 4 different schools. Namely Asker, Nesbru, Vestby, and Nesodden, and they have prepared some questions. So could we have a student representing the different schools up here? 1 or 2? Okay. You can start with okay, just come up on the stage. Yeah, please. We can start with a question from Vestby. Who's that?
Hello, my name is William Puntervold, representing the science program from Vestby videregående. And our question for you is, will AI cause our education to become outdated and potentially useless in the future?
Pinar.
The answer is no.
No?
So that's exactly the focus that we have been discussing over these past 2 years, that what university education and high school education has to do is give us, first of all, the ability to learn new things. I think that's what we will need more and more in the future. our jobs might change after we get a job, after we have a profession. That profession might change drastically during our professional career. So we all have to learn something really, really good, so we have some solid knowledge of what we're going to do. But we also all have to be able to learn new things and gather new, both technological and other kinds of knowledge during our course, and also talk to other knowledge disciplines. So, if you're a doctor, you might have to talk to computer scientists, you might have to talk to biologists, and in also solving the environmental problems, everything we need to do in the future, we have to be many, many different subjects talking together. So this is also one of the skills I think we need to learn more and more for future generations.
Ajla, have you been concerned that you're going to study theoretical physics, right?
That's right, yeah.
Manchester. So a bit concerned. Maybe it's outdated, the way to do it.
Well, I mean, I think physics is a little bit of a poor example to bring up there, because the big goal of studying physics is to realize that what you've studied is outdated and you found something new. So it might be the wrong course to ask. But no, I think the addition of AI to education and also to public sectors and things like that will have, in the end, a net positive if we manage to mobilize, to use it to our advantage and regulate it in a safe manner. Then we can really use it as a tool at our disposal rather than something to be scared of.
Okay. Alexander, I know that you also think that some kind of education that perhaps not is obvious is the solution to the problems proposed by AI.
Yeah, but then, I think one of the many fascinating things about Stuart, Professor Russell's concept of beneficial AI is that it seems obvious that it needs so many different breakthroughs in so many different disciplines to actually make this beneficial AI. So it seems to me like, since this goes to the heart of our humanity, it seems like the door is open for anyone, whatever you study, philosophy, social science, psychology, cognitive science, whatever, you can be at the frontier of AI research. So that's a positive thing.
Okay, do you agree?
Yeah, I think the issue is forcing us to go back and ask, why are we teaching the way we teach? Are we training students to write essays in response to prompts because that's what we want them to be able to do? Or are we training them to write essays in response to prompts because in the process of doing that, they learn how to think and how to express themselves? I think it's much more the latter. But then we should ask, is this the best way to achieve those goals? Could we use the AI tools that we have now, that we didn't have before, to improve student achievement of those goals? I think
how could we do that?
Well, the current AI systems are specifically trained to give complete and helpful answers to every question, which is exactly what you don't want a tutor to do, right? So someone who's a really good human tutor doesn't just say, well, here's the answer to the question, right? They say, well, let's talk about it. What do you think? What if we did this? So they ask questions to the student. ChatGPT I've never seen ChatGPT ask me a question. No. which is clearly wrong, right? I mean, even if I'm just giving it a prompt, it should say, well, could you explain more what you meant by such and such, right? So I can give you a more helpful answer, but it's not trained to do that. So some entities, so Khan Academy, for example, is working on what they call a more Socratic kind of large language model. But I think there's a huge amount of work to do on this. And my bet, what is the biggest and best thing we could do for the world in the next decade? It's actually to deliver high-quality, individualized tutoring to every child in the world. We're not making much progress on that goal.
No. I think we will have another question, and this time perhaps a question from Nesbru.
Yes, my name is Peter, and I'm representing Nesbru videregående skole. And my question to you guys are, how developed does AI need to be before it can act in its own way without being programmed to do so?
Yeah. Does it need be conscious to act in its own way or not? Pinar?
So I think there are now all these philosophical questions about what is conscience. So are machines, do they have conscience? And right now, at least as I know computer science and as I know machines, they don't. And it might be that we might be able to develop some kind of other kinds of machinery and technology which might imitate conscience. But I think it's important to understand that we are talking about intelligence and we are talking about learning, but these things don't actually mean what they mean to human. They mean different things to machines. So they don't have conscience, they don't have intent, they don't have wish or will. They just do what we tell them to do.
But does it need to go so far before it starts acting on its own? I mean, you talked about those agents. They don't have a consciousness, but they can act.
But still, they have a goal. So
goal.
like,
Yeah,
we give them an objective to what to do, but they, again, it becomes a bit. Definition of these things are not so easy. Like, how does the human brain function? We even don't know what goes from neurons to thoughts. These are things we haven't solved yet. So I think it's a bit difficult to then transfer these things to computers and talk about their operating on their own. But I think for one thing in developing safe AI systems, it should be that they always assist us, and then the humans should have the last, let's say, push the button. Even for buying tickets, I think it should be that, well, look, I found this and this itinerary for you. Is it okay? And then you should be able to say, okay, rather than it's going completely on its own. And I think this is what is happening for most of the systems assisting in all kinds of subjects. This is how we're proceeding so far. And I think I would be more afraid of systems that operate autonomously, completely on their own. And I think maybe this could be a part of safe AI, that we don't allow this for important decisions.
I think but there's so many applications. I mean, take the self-driving car, right? We don't want the passenger to have to approve every left turn and every right turn. So there always has to be autonomy. You know, if it's going to mow the lawn in my back garden, you know, even the little vacuum cleaner robots that go around, they're autonomous. But are they conscious? It doesn't matter. Think about this from the point of view of gorillas, right? And they're watching the emergence of human beings. You know, do you think the gorillas are saying, oh, you know, these humans, they're not conscious, so we don't have to worry, right? Even though they are burning our forests and shooting us and all that, right? They're not conscious, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
What matters is competence, right? If I'm losing a game of chess to my phone, which I do all the time, right? I don't think it's conscious, but I'm still losing. And that's what matters. And so it's quite possible we'll never know if machines are conscious. I know some people think they already are. But as I say, from the point of view of us deciding what to do, the consequence of consciousness actually is, should we accord rights to the machine?
Exactly.
But since we have no way of finding out if they're conscious and we don't even know what that means, I think we have to put off that discussion until we have a better idea.
Okay. I don't know, was that an answer to your question? Yes. Okay, very good. Next question is from, I think we had the Oddmund question right now.
Hello, my name is Via, and my question is, there has been a lot of talk about how AI will take over many jobs and leave nothing for humans who actually need them. What are some job positions that you are sure AI will not take over?
Some jobs that AI will not take over. Okay, anyone?
I think we really don't know today. But as the Prime Minister said, each year 300,000 jobs are phased out, and 300,000 new are coming with new employees. So that's I think that's what you during the next decades are going to find out. That's I think that's maybe a sad question, but answer. But what is now happening in the Norwegian workforce is that we have too many jobs and too less people, and that will be the situation also the next decades. We are being not any more people in the workforce, but we are being a lot of more elderly people that needs care, like me. So we have to do things more effectively, and that's where AI technologies has a great possibilities for doing the society better, increasing the economy. But of course, we have to do it in a safe way. But so I think it's very hard to answer your question. But I think what has happened in industry is that the manual jobs has been replaced by robots. What's happening now is that also the office jobs are being maybe replaced by technology. So maybe my ministry will look totally different in 20 years, because what's happening in these 300 offices can be maybe to a greatest part been made by machines.
Okay.
And that's an interesting thought, I think. Yeah.
We have to finish now, so one last question, and that is from... may I add that I don't think I will have an AI plumber or a carpenter yet. Okay, last question from Asker.
Hello, I am Herman Lundervold from Asker, History and Philosophy. A question for Stuart Russell. Do you fear that people will make themselves too dependent on AI and other forms of technology to the point that our cognitive potential will decrease?
That's an interesting question.
That's a great question, and it's sort of implied by the picture I showed from Wall-E.
Yeah.
And so Wall-E, despite being a Disney film, is very subversive, and it depicts the human beings as big babies, right? They're even wearing baby clothes, even though they're adults, and they're so looked after by the machines that they're actually unable to walk, and they just consume. And this idea actually goes back to a story written in 1909 by the novelist E.M. Forster, who mostly wrote novels about declining British upper-class society, but he wrote this science fiction story called The Machine Stops, in which people are looked after by the machine. They become obese. They become reluctant to engage in face-to-face contact. They have email. They have video conferencing with iPads. They have email backlogs. And they become completely dependent on the machine. And in fact, they no longer even understand how the machine works. And then when the machine stops working, their whole civilization collapses.
And is this a real risk, do you think? Shortly, we have
So I think yes, because, you know, and it's a legend, you know, the lotus eaters, right? Because everything is provided for them, they become idle and stupid and so on. It's a very old idea. And if you think about it, if you do a calculation, right, you look at how many human beings have lived and how much time they spent teaching their children and how much time the children spent learning. It's about 1 trillion person-years of teaching and learning. And we have passed knowledge on. Actually, we have knowledge from pre-human species that was passed on through hundreds of thousands of generations. The reason is because there's no other choice. Now we have a choice. We can pass it on to the machines, right? We put it on paper, but the paper doesn't do anything. So it has to get into the minds of people for our civilization to continue. But that's no longer true.
So for the first time, we have the options to outsource this to the machines.
So we can outsource, we can break that chain that goes back to our pre-human ancestors.
Right.
So that's terrifying
That's
to
a
me.
scary thought. All right. And with that, I think we were finished with this panel discussion. So thank you to the panel.
Thanks to the students for great questions. Thanks to the panel. Thanks to Torkild, who will be back on stage a bit later.